listening to graphic details of the attack from Harrison's wife this afternoon. Our social affairs correspondent, Dave Guest, was in court as the story unfolded. Dave, the events that night sounded like everyone's worst nightmare, an intruder believing he had a mission to kill.
That's right, Gordon. Can you imagine? You wake up in the middle of the night after hearing breaking glass. You go downstairs and there's a man there screaming, shouting, waving a knife at you. Well, that's just what happened to Olivia and George Harrison. Only it got worse because the man then attacked George Harrison, stabbing him several times, and attacked his wife too. That man was Michael Abram.
So, Michael Abram is that man, you say. I mean, what is his defence for this?
He is basically pleading insanity. He's pleaded not guilty to attempted murder on the grounds of insanity. Opening the prosecution today, Simon Mayo said that Michael Abraham had had a delusional illness, which made him think that he was possessed by George Harrison and that he was himself. He wasn't. His evidence was given in a written statement which was read to the court, but it lost nothing in that. In fact, the court was silent, apart from the sound of journalists scribbling to get everything down. George Harrison described how he tried to calm Abram down by shouting Hare Krishna at him. That didn't work. The men grappled. The man stabbed Harrison several times. Harrison said he remembered lying on the floor, feeling the knife going into his chest, feeling his mouth filling with blood, and he thought he was going to die.
Well, George Harrison, as you say, wasn't there today in person, but his wife was. What did she tell the court?
She was. She gave the account of how she had tried to defend her husband. She had attacked Abram with a poker and then with a table lamp, but that had simply provoked him into attacking her.
It's tragic anyone should suffer such a mental breakdown and commit such a brutal act. We can never forget that he was full of hatred and violence when he came into our home.
Abram's descent into madness was fueled by his drug habit. On the streets of Liverpool, he became a familiar sight, wandering aimlessly in a world of his own, listening to music. He was often to be found outside the H&B shop, singing at the top of his voice. Abram became obsessed with the Beatles. He was convinced Paul McCartney was a witch.
I said to Michael, they're just words in a song. You know, the Beatles write beautiful words, wonderful music, but they are just songs. Stop reading things into them. But of course, by that time, you know, Michael wouldn't listen.
But the obsession continued, and George Harrison became the focus of Abram's deluded thoughts. He believed Harrison was a sorcerer taking possession of his soul. He thought he had a God-given mission to destroy the former Beatle.
Behind the gates of the Harrisons' home tonight, police forensic teams are still gathering evidence at the scene of the attack. The house sits in 30 acres of garden on a hill overlooking Henley-on-Thames. Police say the intruder broke in through a kitchen window. He was carrying a 7-inch knife and managed to stab George Harrison and his wife Olivia in a 10-minute rampage round their mansion before being overpowered by staff. Harrison was taken by ambulance to the Royal Berkshire Hospital. He had a knife wound an inch deep in his chest, which had deflated his lung. And after treatment, he was transferred to another hospital in North London, which specialises in chest wounds. Doctors there said he had a narrow escape.
The chest is full of main blood vessels and arteries, and the lungs are full of main blood vessels as well. So, as I say, it is just by chance that it wasn't very serious.
Later, police in Liverpool broke into a flat in the Highton area of the city and carried out a detailed search. The flat's occupied by 33-year-old Michael Abram, who has a history of psychiatric problems and, according to his family, has developed an obsession with the Beatles. Thames Valley police who are investigating the attack on Harrison say they're still unsure about the motive.
You know, there could be a number of things. Could be excessive plans, could be somebody who simply didn't like him. I don't know.
Detectives questioned the man they're holding for a short time this evening and will resume again tomorrow morning. Meanwhile, George Harrison is expected to spend another 48 hours in hospital, but doctors haven't ruled out the possibility that he may yet return home for the Millennium celebrations he's been planning. Harry Smith, ITN, Henley-on-Thames.
If I was given the opportunity to pick out 4 or 5 words to describe George Harrison, the first one that would come to mind would be spiritual. Commitment would be another one. I suppose in a way, if there was a one word to say, a developing guitarist would be another one. And in his own public persona, he was probably quite shy. George Harrison, very early on, took up a spiritual path. Unfortunately for George, he was laughed at and derided by certain sections of the public because they couldn't Hare Krishna, the movement, these kids walking up and down High Street, banging a tambourine, singing Krishna, Hare Krishna. But what George discovered, which most of us discover in the end, that there's only one God. And that all these so-called avatars or holy men may or may not have existed. And what these other religions, which are called esoteric religions, teach you is that it's more likely than not they didn't exist. So the idea of Moses and Muhammad and Jesus were all based on folk stories to provide the public or the proletariat with a fear-like given situation. So they were kept under control by this thing of fear, that if you don't do good, you'll be in trouble. George found there was an alternative answer to that, and that most of this really wasn't true and it didn't sit well with him spiritually.